Hello again. Here's something that a project that I started doing, and then I had one of these sort of epiphany aha moments. You guys really should see this. So here we are. This is a kilt that I had made about 22 years ago-ish, maybe a little bit longer than that. And the client has brought it back to me because he's dropped a bit of weight. He's certainly, his figure has certainly changed. So he's lost 4 inches at the waist, a little less at the hip. But of course, gluteus maximus, mostly muscle in any case, and muscle is heavier than fat. So yeah, the numbers haven't changed enormously. Again, 4 inches off the waist. But because his figure has changed, of course, simple geometry, this is a longer measurement than that is. So because he's more fit, the kilt is too long, even though ostensibly, the distance from his natural waist to the top of his knee hasn't changed, but the cloth is taking a shorter route. So initially I looked at it and I thought, okay, no great problem. We reduce it from the top as per normal. We reduce the width of the aprons as per normal. New canvas. I mean, it was kind of interesting. Actually, it was very interesting. I was very sort of nostalgic to see how I was doing, what my methods were, my practices were over 20 years ago. And there's some things that changed. I'm not going to flip the kilt over right now, but I was still doing an inner and an outer canvas, a narrow strip of canvas followed by a wider strip of canvas. I no longer find that necessary. So, and the canvas that I was using at the time is quite light. It's almost Oxford shirting, but it does have, the required stiffness, the required stability along its length. But I'm going to replace that with heavier canvas. What I did find, because I sat down with him and looked at it and says, okay, I'm going to do this, this, and this, basically reduce the size of the aprons. But as I looked at it a bit further, and it also made note again of his physiology, how that's changed. I've discovered that I have to go a little farther into it. So instead of leaving the pleats as they are, reducing the size of the aprons, of course, when we get past, we really shouldn't go narrower than the horns of the pelvis, because we get sort of into tartan skirt country. And this fellow is still a stalwart figure, right? He's very, very fit, but he's very, very solid construction. Solid build, I should say, and as such we need that larger apron. It should be at least 50%. So to do that, I have to pull all the pleats apart, and I'm also, because this is 26 pleats, and again, my invariable rule of thumb is always an odd number of pleats, because even if you don't think you can spot it, your eye can, that you need that center pleat, and if it's a tiny bit asymmetrical, the eye catches it. I certainly believe so. So because, this is a full 8 yards of cloth, but also from my principle of first do no harm, I'm not going to remove any cloth from this, because this may pass down to another generation of the family or outside of the family where we need that cloth again. So rather than have enormously deep apron pleats on either side, an enormously deep fold over at the end, I'm going to add a pleat from 26, I'm going to add a pleat to 27, which will reduce the amount of surplus cloth on the inner apron, so that the apron pleat will still be between 1/4 and 1/3 of the total width. The fold over won't be excessively deep. So we're increased from 26 to 27 pleats, which frankly, when altering a kilt to be smaller is something I've never had to do before. And the second part is to restore those proportions of a 23-inch. Originally it was 24 inches front apron, 23 inches across the pleats. We have to reduce the width of the pleats at waist and at hip from 1 inch and 1 1/4 to 3/4 plus the width of a piece of chalk, a chalk line, and 1 inch. So that means that I'm going to have to pick every pleat apart. Fortunately, it's not a tremendous amount of work, But so from here, I'm going to completely rip down the kilt, as they say, remove all of the seams, press it flat, press all of these creases out of it, and then sew it up again to the new dimensions again of 3/4 plus and 1 inch, and then carry on as per normal. Oh, the other things I'm going to do, again, because I found the fact that this kilt is held up, he's had considerable wear out of it, but it still looked essentially new. It just didn't fit anymore. But there are things I'm going to change. I was still, at the time, my supplier supplied, the straps offered by my supplier at the time were just too light, and we can see how these have stretched out. So the supplier was aware of that, and then they were going through some issues. They replaced them with straps that are just ever slightly too heavy. But this is better than this. This is unsightly and pulling apart. So we're going to replace the lighter straps with the heavier straps. And again, totally tear the kilt down, build it up again, heavier canvas, and a new top band. I threw the top band away because when I looked at it, I thought, what on earth was I thinking? But I was probably, almost certainly limited by my sources of supply at the time. Supplies are better now. So we're going to rebuild this, and again, to my current standard. My old standards were fine. My new standards are better because I've learned with every kilt, with every bit of work you do, you learn. If you pay attention, you're learning. I'm also going to take the extra step that when the pleats are done, the canvases are in, I'm going to call them back for a forward fitting and actually measure the A-line of the apron to them using chalk, put the kilt on them, and actually chalk the finished A-lines, because that's something I can probably almost certainly achieve without him being present. But let's get it right. I have the luxury of having him just live. He's only a couple of kilometers away. I can call him down the hill, measure it to him, and he'll appreciate that extra attention, and I'll appreciate the fact that I'm getting it right the first time. So there we go. I may or may not have a follow-up video to this. Probably will at the end. But in any case, know that I've recorded this and got this information out to you, and more importantly to him. I'm going to carry on with this. So thank you very much and have a good day. Yeah, just an add-on. It just occurred to me to show you why I consider it necessary to pick this apart, press it flat, and then mark and sew it up again. Because again, our new width at the hip is going to be 1 inch. Right now it's what it looks like 1 1/8. I could try to unpick a seam and then roll it and then sew it, and that would leave, I would then have to baste each pleat, like rolling it and basting it, as I've shown in another video about repairing pleats that have been messed up by an incautious visit to the dry cleaner, which is to say any visit to the dry cleaner. But and the question would be, if I did that, if I just rolled it and sewed it and then rolled and basted it there and then pressed it, would that completely press the old pleat out? Maybe, maybe not, but I'm not prepared to take that risk, because why do the job twice, right? So again, you can see if I just rolled these over to the new width, so let's just do it here. I should have a different colored chalk because it's getting confusing. But if I was just to do that, all of the pleats are then going to have the white line off center, and that's going to really catch the eye, and not in a good way. So this is why we have to do it. We're taking it apart, pressing it flat, so that we know, I mean, experiment's fun, experiment's necessary, but not when it creates a bunch of extra work on a kilt that a fellow's waiting to wear within a couple of weeks. So there we go. Thank you. Hope that clears it up.